If you are watching this while lazily finishing last year's salad and nursing a headache, congratulations, you are perfectly recreating one of the oldest Roman rituals. About 2,000 years ago, your ancestors were doing the same thing, trying to recover after a week of madness. Only back then it had a name, Saturnalia. Today we are going to break down how Rome officially legalized anarchy, why enslaved people could openly mock their masters without punishment, and how that wild pagan chaos eventually turned into the cozy family-style New Year you know today. The Romans loved order, not just a little, obsessively. Schedules, discipline, law, three pillars holding up their entire civilization. And that is exactly why, once a year, right on schedule, they staged total anarchy, approved by the state. Why? Because it was their favorite dream, a great Roman reset. From childhood, every Roman heard the myth of the golden age of the god Saturn, a time when the earth gave harvests by itself, when there were no wars, no private property, and words like slave or master simply did not exist. Everyone was equal, everyone was fed. Saturnalia was a brilliant attempt to return to the beginning, at least for 1 week. The first step towards that utopia was to put the law on pause. On the first day of the festival, across the empire, they declared a justitium, a suspension of public business. Courts shut their doors, lictors lowered the fasces, and executions were treated as sacrilege. Generals put away their plans. Starting a war during these days was believed to anger the gods. Even in schools, beatings were canceled. The state, that giant machine of pressure and control, simply stopped running. But canceling the legal code was not enough. They also had to erase hierarchy from people's faces. The next step was a dress code that did the opposite of normal Rome. The whole country took off its uniform. The heavy, restrictive official toga, the symbol of a citizen's status, went back into the chest. Instead, everyone from senator to beggar put on a synthesis, colorful, comfortable, often tasteless indoor clothing, and on their heads a pileus, a Phrygian-style cap linked with freedmen. By clothes alone, you could no longer tell whether you were speaking to a consul or a cobbler. The final symbolic note was struck in the Temple of Saturn. All year long, the statue of the god had its feet bound with woolen ties, so the spirit of the Golden Age would not escape from Rome. But in December, priests solemnly untied the knots. The god himself was set free. Everyone understood the message. If the higher powers are free, then people can do whatever they want. But the biggest earthquake did not happen in the Forum. It started inside private homes, at the dinner table. The worst nightmare of any Roman aristocrat was a slave revolt. They lived on a volcano. For every free person, there were often several enslaved. And to keep that volcano from exploding, once a year, the Romans flipped the world upside down, willingly. It began with a shock at dinner. On a normal day, the enslaved person was a shadow serving the dishes. During Saturnalia, that shadow took the master's place on the dining couch. This was not just a meal. It was a carefully staged performance. The head of the household, a man who, with a snap of his fingers, could send someone to the cross, put on a servant's apron. He personally poured expensive Falernian wine into the cups of people he might have whipped yesterday for breaking a plate. The enslaved ate the best cuts of meat. They chewed loudly, demanded more, and laughed in their owner's face. It was a vaccine against pride. The Romans believed that if power was to remain strong, it needed to be humbled from time to time. But food was only half of it. The main attraction of Saturnalia was total freedom of speech. Rome had a saying, "As many slaves as enemies." Hatred could build up for years, and the festival worked as a necessary release valve. In these days, an enslaved person was allowed to wash fear off their skin. They could walk up to their master and say everything straight to his face, call him a greedy bastard, mock his failures in love, laugh at his political ambitions. The poet Horace describes a scene where a servant named Davis lectures his master, telling him that he too is a prisoner of his own passions and stupidity, and the master stays silent or jokes back. People knew the boundary. It was a game played on a blade. Make the joke too cruel, and after the festival they may remember it. The logic was cynical and flawless. A man who has vented his anger and cursed you in December is far less likely to cut your throat in your sleep in July.
To stop this disorder from turning into bloodshed, it needed a ruler. In every group, in every house, they chose a Saturnalicious princeps, the Prince of Saturnalia. No bribery, no campaigning, only blind chance. They hid a bean or a coin inside a cake. Whoever got the slice with the surprise got the power. This bean king could give any order, and refusing was not allowed. He could command a respected senator to crow like a rooster in the street. He could force a hardened legionary to dance naked on the table. He could make a philosopher drink wine in one gulp after another until he collapsed. The point was simple and brutal, to show that social status is, in many ways, luck. Today you are a consul. Tomorrow the lot falls to someone else, and you are nobody. In this drunken madness, Romans learned to laugh at the very idea of authority. Behind the comedy was a deep psychological moment.
Saturnalia gave people a rare chance to see a human being inside what Roman law called a speaking tool. The philosopher Seneca proudly wrote to a friend that during the festival he sat at the table with his enslaved people, not because tradition demanded it, but because he wanted to talk. For a few short days, the gap of fear disappeared. You realized the servant could make jokes, that he had dreams, that he too feared death. Romans reminded themselves, in front of fate, illness, and the gods, we are all just mortal, and time will wash our differences away. And where everyone feels equal before destiny, a wild, unstoppable gambling fever awakens.
On any other day, gambling in Rome was illegal. If you were caught with dice, you paid a fine, lost your reputation, and became an outcast. But Saturnalia suspended that rule. All of Rome turned into one giant gaming hall with no limits. The clatter of dice could drown out even drunken shouting. People played everywhere, in filthy taverns, in marble atriums, right on the steps of temples. This was the moment of truth. An enslaved person could stake a few coins against a senator's yearly income and win. During these days, there were no poor and no rich. There was only blind fortuna. One throw of the dice could make a beggar into a king and ruin an aristocrat. Gambling became the great equalizer. Winnings burned immediately in a fever of spending. Giving gifts was not just politeness, it was a hard social obligation. In the final days of the festival, a special market opened, the Sigillaria. The best-selling item was small clay figurines.
According to legend, people once fed Saturn with human lives. Later, they paid with dolls instead. The second must-have was wax candles, a symbol of light in the darkest, longest night of the year. That pre-New Year chaos in the shops feels familiar to everyone. A Roman would curse traffic jams of litters the same way you curse gridlock. He would push through crowds, stand in lines, and panic over the same question: what do I give my patron so I do not go broke, but also do not look cheap? And speaking of generosity, Roman patrons spent fortunes to buy the loyalty of their clients. You, to support our channel, only need to like the video and subscribe. It is a signal to the gods of the algorithm that the history of Rome matters to you. Thank you, legionaries. In Rome, a gift was always a minefield. It could raise someone up or destroy them. The poet Martial complained for years that rich people sent him rubbish, rotten fish, old rags, or even their own terrible books.
It was an elegant way to insult someone without saying a word. Emperor Augustus went even further. He loved lotteries with a surprise. One guest would draw a ticket and receive a sack of gold. The neighbor would draw his and get a kitchen sponge or hair tongs. The emperor watched and enjoyed it. Who could laugh at themselves and who would explode with envy? The gift became a stress test. But the biggest, most far-reaching gift the Romans gave to all of us was one they never intended. They gave us Christmas.
Over time, the wild frenzy of Saturnalia began to change shape. By the 3rd century after Christ, the Roman Empire was cracking, and it needed a new center of gravity. Emperor Aurelian, a hard soldier, found one. He took the most powerful symbol understood by everyone from Britain to Persia, the sun. And on the 25th of December, around the time of the winter solstice, when daylight begins to defeat darkness, he declared an official celebration, the birthday of the unconquered sun, Sol Invictus. This was no longer just a drinking festival. It became the main state ceremony, a symbol of eternal power and the rebirth of the empire. The date, the 25th of December, was firmly reserved for the greatest pagan cult. Then, the Christians stepped onto the stage. In the 4th century, after gaining legal status, the church faced a huge problem. How do you make millions of people give up the biggest holiday of the year? Ban it? Pointless.
Romans would sooner give up aqueducts than December fun, so church leaders pulled off a brilliant move. They understood that if you cannot defeat a festival, you lead it. The Bible does not give a date for the birth of Christ. There is no clear reference at all. So the church made a strategic decision. It took the most popular date on the calendar and placed its own celebration on top of the pagan one. Birthday of the unconquered sun? Forget it. Now it is the birthday of the Son of God. The church kept the outer form, feasting, gifts, gatherings, but replaced the meaning entirely. So what exactly did we take from the Romans? Almost everything. We like to think our New Year traditions are unique, but they are ancient inheritance. Green decorations at home? Romans covered everything with branches of holly, ivy, and laurel, symbols of life that does not die in winter. Candles on the table? Those are wax candles like the Sarai, a traditional gift, a sign that light defeats darkness.
Santa's red hat? Look at the pileus, a cone-shaped cap worn by freedmen and by everyone during Saturnalia. The resemblance is striking. Office parties? A direct descendant of the banquets held by Roman craft guilds, where bosses and workers drank together. Even 2,000 years later, we still repeat the rituals of a pagan holiday, just under a different name. But the most important thing is not the surface details. The core of the festival stayed the same. Why did a Roman need Saturnalia? He needed hope, the belief that after the longest and darkest night of the year, the sun would return, that after a year of hard work, wars, and intrigue, there would be a reset and a breath of relief. Now ask yourself, why do we need New Year? For the exact same reason. Like them, we need to believe that when the clock strikes midnight, we can start again with a clean page. Technology changed, empires fell, gods died, but the basic human need for a holiday of hope did not.
Saturnalia taught tough Romans a simple, harsh truth. Order is worth something only when you know the taste of chaos. You cannot be a perfect citizen and a stoic 365 days a year. The mind will not survive it. Sometimes you need to take off the toga, put on a stupid hat, hug an enemy, and lose your last sesterces in a game of dice, so that, once you sober up, you can build the empire again with fresh strength. So do not blame yourself for laziness, overeating, or one extra drink these days. You are not falling apart. You are doing serious historical reenactment. You are paying a debt to a tradition older than any modern religion. Breathe out. The chaos will end soon, and order will return. Io Saturnalia, legionaries. See you in the new year.